Hello everybody, Nightmare here, and this is another edition of Nightmare Reviews. I haven't done a film review in a while, so I thought I might as well kickstart them again by, just making a couple of new ones, and I'll start uploading more of my old ones. This review will be of Pan's Labyrinth, a movie I just saw in film 4. A very, well-known by now, and very well-received movie. And I want to do something a little different to my movie reviews now. I've been a bit iffy with the, rating system, going back from out of 10 to stars and whatnot, all your typical shit. And really, I don't think I've been, after watching Trevor of the Tree Views channel, which I will post a link to in the description box, since I think he's a good movie, a very competent movie reviewer, with good ideas, know what he's talking about, and does make some really good points. After watching a few of his videos, I realised that I wasn't really perhaps explaining properly or giving enough thought into describing what kind of audience would enjoy this movie, what kind of film, it's actually for. And so, I think I'll do that now. And the scoring system will be out of 100. It might sound a bit complicated, but this will give both me and you both a very accurate description and very accurate idea of how good the movie is, and what are its strong points, what are its weak points, where it loses marks on. It gives a nice option, and because sometimes just simply 5 stars out of 10 just does not give enough room and does not give enough variation, because Iron Man and The Dark Knight are both brilliant movies, both brilliant films that came out this year, and both very highly rated 5-star by all critics, but they don't seem to be on exactly the same level. They wouldn't get exactly the same score, and so I feel this is kind of how the star system is flawed, really. So perhaps this out of 100 system will actually perhaps work more. I might change the system a little bit, kind of back and forth, depending. I'm just trying to refine it to give, the best idea in general. Anyway, on to the movie review. Yeah, Pan's Labyrinth. This is a strange one. This is essentially a fairy tale. This is essentially what it is, a fairy tale for grown-ups. Memento. Yeah, this is essentially a fairy tale for grown-ups. It follows, it starts off with the classic fairy tale style, where a widowed mother and her young 11-year-old daughter are sent off to a new place with a brutal stepfather, and the girl goes on a magical journey where she is led away and, linked to various mischief by certain magical beings. However, it's not your typical fairy tale, because not only is it more geared for, adults, because it's a very brutal at times. It can be, it's not very violent all the time, but it does have numerous scenes of violence, and some things that would definitely not be suitable for children. And the main differences to a regular fairy tale, which the director really has cleverly done, is the fact that the brutal stepfather, who is a Spanish army general, is set in 1944, and I probably assume he's Nazi or something. It doesn't really go into much detail, but he's a very brutal and quite selfish general. But he is not per se the ultimate evil. You do not hate him 100%. He is a tolerable person. The actor portrays him. This is where one example of where the acting shines, because the way he's portrayed is he's a very tolerable person. He gives tolerance, and he doesn't snap just like that. He is very commanding and very authoritative, and he can do some really nasty things, really bad and horrible things. Yet, he can still be a fairly regular man, if you will. He can still just ask for things and not blow his stack and not beat his wife or child into submission at any little word. He's not like that. He has more self-restraint than that, and he can appear as perhaps just a upper-class gentleman, and not terribly a villain. However, as the story goes on, he does his brutal acts and more of his selfishness does show, and his character develops. Doesn't really add to much, but you know, his character becomes more clear, and you know more exactly what he's wanting, what he's thinking, what he's on about. And the little girl, I applaud this child actress who probably is no more older than character, about 11 years old. Excuse me. And yet she shows amazing restraint. She acts like a little girl actually would of that age. She's quite shy, she's quite reserved, she likes reading fairy tales, and, you know, she's a bit reluctant, but also fascinated at the same time, and also misled by the strange pan-like creature, which I forget the name of. I just refer to Pan for, it's not actually named as Pan, you know, in it, but I'll just name it as that. And the fairies, Pan and the fairies, she is quite easily led by it, and Pan, you know, is a very interesting character, because you at first might think it to be more traditional fairy tale-esque, where the mischievous creature is the little girl, and she realises that he's the bad guy, but no. As the film goes on, the film progresses, you know, despite, you know, being the harsh creature that he is, he does actually have good intentions. He is actually more helpful to the girl than her family members are. And the real villains are the father, the brutal stepfather, the, you know, general, and, you know, going against and willing to just kill anybody at a moment's notice that, you know, he is pissed off with, essentially. He's not the kind of person you want to get angry, I can tell you that. And as the film goes on, I don't think this is a film for casual audiences. It's more for the more intrigued people or the more hardened film fans, because this movie isn't so much always focused on the magic. The magic and the girl and the creatures are quite involved with the plot. However, the plot mostly focuses around the rebellion against this general, and his brutality, and how he'll kill anybody at a moment's notice just to get, you know, what he wants. This movie is very well thought out, and the good acting drives the story with more actions than actual dialogue. And the creatures, the actual fantasy creatures themselves, are quite dark, more so than in traditional fairy tales, which are traditionally dark, which also seem to, you know, fit a child's imagination. It really feels like it's out of a child's nightmare. I also give this movie marks for avoiding the typical instant abusive stepfather and overly happy, you know, an overly talkative girl that, you know, might be typical in this kind of movie, as I said. Girl, yeah, as I said before, the girl, you know, just shows quite a lot of restraint, and she's really good in this movie. This movie isn't very quickly paced, however, it's fairly slow paced, it's over 2 hours, but it doesn't feel dragged on, it doesn't feel dragged out. If you're involved with the story, you won't be at the edge of your seat all the time, but you will be interested enough to just watch through the film and see how it progresses, see what, you know, she's going to do next, or how she might get out of, you know, this kind of situation. The director has really well thought out and really put a lot of effort into a plot and character driven, you know, kind of thing, rather than having big fancy events always happening. And it's also interesting at points because the mother, you know, seals, this is a bit spoilery, but the mother seals her own fate because she doesn't believe in magic, because she's trying to tell the little girl the magic doesn't exist. And even though the girl knows that, you know, the magic saved her mother and actually made her feel better, because, you know, the mother doesn't believe in fairy tales and trying to teach her daughter this, she ends up sealing her own doom and dies in childbirth with a son. I must say though, quickly before this video ends, because I've only got left, damn the 9-minute mark, that this film loses target movie points because the target audience is a bit too specific. As I said before, the casual movie fans probably won't be able to hang on enough, and it might find too brutal, too outgoing. Not, you know, it's not like Lord of the Rings where you're completely immersed in this world. It's very surreal. It's almost quite, it's very creepy. It's very scary, in fact, in the way that this little girl's in surreal surroundings, and, you know, she's being, and this brutal stepfather can still kill her, and, you know, and probably will take her life because you know how she's acting, even though he doesn't realise that she's acting because of these fantasy creatures, and even though she's drawn in, she, you know, is doing this all for both her intentions and to escape this, but also because of a child's fantasy. It's not like Lord of the Rings where you get huge climaxes, fantasy battle climaxes everywhere. It's a slow thing, it's very brutal, it's quite dark, and you have to have a good attention span to properly, you know, get into this. But if you're, you know, people might be expecting this to be more akin to a more adult version of the 1980s film Labyrinth, which was, I found, rather silly really. But this is very good. And if you haven't seen this movie, I recommend you check it out. Although I must say that this is not for a casual audience. If you don't have a good attention span, and you don't, you know, have a good, find straightforward plots very easy, and you can't keep track of subplots, then I would not recommend this movie to you. I give this movie 80 out of 100. Very well thought out, although will only, you know, reach a certain number of people. And now for something completely different. Come on, what you been looking at?